Welcome to Gary's Urban Larder, coming to you from my kitchen in Andalusia in Spain. Today we're going to prepare crepes for you, which we're going to fill with a bechamel cream that has ham in it. So we have some beautiful bits of ham. You may have leftover ham. We're going to prepare the batter for the crepes. It's a very thin batter. We're going to do that first. We've got some beautiful ingredients as usual. We've got some Gruyere cheese. We have onion studded with some clove, bay leaf, nutmeg, the 2 eggs, milk. We've got butter, we've got flour, salt, cream, and sugar. So we're going to start off first things first with the batter. And we're doing that because the batter should stand a few minutes. Some people say an hour. It's not really necessary. I'd say 10-15 minutes. So I'm adding our flour, which is about a cup or 125 grams. All of the ingredients are listed in the description below. So don't worry, we're just going to show you how to prepare that. So to the flour, we're going to add a pinch of salt, and we're going to add some sugar. Now you might find that surprising, but the sugar actually helps us with the coloring on the crepe itself. So I'm just adding those in, and I'm going to whisk those together just slightly. And those are our dry ingredients for the crepe. To that, I'm going to add my eggs. So some people like to beat their eggs before, but I like to add them and just beat them into the flour. And I will do that now and just show you how we slowly start to incorporate flour. I'm not mixing it all together. I'm combining the eggs slowly with the flour that sits at the side of the edge of the bowl. And this is to avoid any lumps. As we get that almost to a paste, I'm going to add the milk. And I'm going to add the milk a little bit at a time and start to mix it in, again to help avoid lumps. But also we want to have a very thin batter, so we want to take care in terms of the amount of liquid we add. And so you can see how easily that's combined and relatively lump-free. Now add some more milk as we're keeping a focus on our consistency. Again, we're going to want a really thin batter. And a crepe is basically a very thin pancake. So that's still too thick. That's a very viscous batter. And again, we want it really to flow almost as easily as the milk does. Yeah, I think just a little bit more milk, and we can let that sit for a moment. Yes, it's very thin. Now I'm going to get a saucepan, and we're going to start this on a fairly low heat. I'm going to melt just a bit of butter, which I'm going to add part of that butter into the batter for the crepe. And then we're going to add additional flour to make a roux. So that's starting to melt. Again, just checking my consistency of the batter. You can see that it's really easily moves very easily. It flows. Yeah. I don't want my butter to burn. We want a beurre blanc and not a brown sauce. So we want to be very careful in terms of that. And I'm just going to add a bit of the melted butter now to that batter. I have quite enough butter in the pan here for my roux, so I'm adding just a bit more. While that's melting, I'll combine that butter into the crepe batter. And I think that batter could actually be a bit thinner. So there we go. And now I'm going to add my flour to the roux, or to the butter to make the roux. And what you normally have is approximately the same amount of butter as flour. So keep mixing that because you want to cook out that rawness of the flour itself. And again, we don't want it to brown because we do want a white sauce. And it's important to learn to make a roux for most of your sauces. Most of your dishes will require roux at some point, at some stage. So now that that's combined, happy with that, I'm going to remove that and let that cool. And now, while that's cooling, what we're going to do is prepare the milk to add to the roux to actually thin it. So I've got another little saucepan here. My distribution plate, because this is copper and you can't use it on an induction hob. So we're going to add our onion. I'm going to add bay leaf. We're going to add our milk. And we've got clove, which we're going to add to the end, as well as the cheese. So I just want that to heat a bit. And while that's warming through, I'm going to chop the ham. So again, I've got some really beautiful ham pieces, and I'm just going to cut those fairly finely. It doesn't have to be too precise. So you can see I'm just running my knife through that to get that fairly fine. They don't have to be uniform, but I don't want big chunks of ham. It would not be very nice in the sauce that's going to fill our crepes. There you go. I'm just going to run the knife through one more time, just rocking it back and forth. Let your knife do the work for you. It doesn't need a lot of force. You set that aside. And we check on our milk mixture. And that's just coming up to simmering. So I'll be right back. I'm going to clean up my work surface just a little bit. Now we return to our bechamel. The milk is just coming up to simmer. You can see at the edges, you're starting to see very small bubbles. I don't know if you can see that or not. So I'm going to change this now for our saucepan, where we've had the cooling roux. So that's cooled now. And if you have a sieve, this is a good idea, or a good time to use it if you have a sieve. So I'm going to pour the milk, strain that through the sieve. Again, I'm going to reserve a bit of the time until I need it, and then I'm going to combine that into the butter and flour mixture until that starts to thicken. You can see that begins to thicken fairly quickly. And now I'll add the rest of the milk. Combine that until it's into nice smooth bechamel. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. I'm not going to add very much salt because the ham itself is very salty, and when we add that, it will flavor that. I'm going to switch actually to a whisk. I think sometimes a whisk can give you more control. Now you can see how wonderful that is. Now what we're going to do now is turn the heat off completely. And I'm going to remove this from the heat, and I'm going to add cream. So this makes it a cream sauce rather than just a bechamel. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Nice and creamy, rich, smooth, no lumps. A little bit more cream. You can never have too much cream. So to that, I'm going to add our ham. And just a quick stir. And we're going to add some Gruyere cheese. So I'm just going to grate that directly into the pan. Now, many of you have been asking when I'll add the nutmeg, and this is the point. I'm just going to grate that directly into the sauce. I'm now going to make the crêpes. So I'm just going to put this on again a very low temperature. We're going to melt a little butter in our pan. And this is a non-stick pan, which is often very helpful in making crepes because they can stick. Just let that melt. I've got a little brush, so I'm going to just distribute that butter around the bottom of the pan. And what I'm going to do is ladle some of our wonderful batter into this. So you can see this. So I've got about 3/4 full ladle, and I'm just going to put that at one side, and then I'm going to roll that around until it coats the bottom of that pan. And any holes we can fill easily. What's left. And you will see we've got a fairly lacy edge around that, and that's what we want. We'll start to see that bubble as it starts to solid in color on the bottom side. And they often say the first crepe is the hardest. Often that pancake is one that you discard. Let's see if we can get away with it or not today. It's just starting to set. Don't want to turn it too soon. I still want some color, but these will get cooked again. So don't worry too much about getting the right amount of color, because we'll cook it again in the pan here. And so while that's cooking, I'm just going to get a plate to put the crepes on. So that's actually moving loosely in the pan, which is a good sign. And let's see if I can turn it. And there we are. It's got a bit of color. We're going to get a bit more color on the other side. Okay, there's our first one. Just put that there while we do the next. And again, just gonna lower the heat just a touch. Add our butter. Add our batter. And that's it. That's as easy as it is to make a little crepe, a little pancake that we're going to fill with a beautiful Béchamel and ham and Gruyere. So I'm just going to check, and we've got movement on this crepe. And we're going to flip it. And there's our next crepe. So now what we'll do is just make crepes from the rest of this batter, and then we'll come back and we will fill them with our Béchamel, ham, and Gruyere. And now we're ready to fill our crepes. So we're going to brown them off in the pan. So I've got some butter browning, well, melting slightly. We don't want it to be too brown. And you can see the Béchamel has actually firmed up. I'll get that in the center. And we're going to make a packet. I'm folding that over. Folding that over. And then I'm going to move that away from me. And then seam side down in the fat. And we'll do another. Add our filling. Bring over our crepe to make a packet. We're going to roll that away from ourselves, seam side down into the pan. And we repeat. Again, seam side down in the pan. Get our clean plate. And we're just going to brown these. I think those have browned. I'm just going to move them onto some kitchen paper, paper toweling to drain just a bit. And there we have our finished crepes. They smell amazing. Thanks for joining us on Gary's Urban Larder. Please give us a thumbs up if you liked what you saw today, if you learned something. Think about subscribing, we'd really appreciate that. And also ring that notification bell so you can be notified by our next episode. Thank you so much for tuning in.